Hi and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Here's a story I never thought I'd be telling, but everything changed the moment she said, "I'm done with this." And I said, "Good, I'm free." She didn't even flinch, just grabbed her tote bag, turned the lock, and walked out barefoot. No coat, no hesitation, like she couldn't leave fast enough. I remember just standing there in the kitchen, next to a pot of burnt rice and a half-eaten rotisserie chicken, wondering if this was real. I didn't follow her. I didn't call. I just listened to the silence as if it might explain something. 10 minutes later, the fire alarm went off. Yeah, I forgot the burner was still on. That's how my marriage ended. Smoke, silence, and a woman who didn't even bother to close the door behind her. I didn't cry. Not then. I laughed. A weird, broken sort of laugh that felt like it belonged to someone else. I sat down at the table, looked across at her empty chair, and said out loud, "Okay, what now?" The dog didn't answer, because of course she took the dog too. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine even though I don't drink, opened her side of the closet, and just stared. It was empty, not even a sock left behind. She even took the little lavender sachets I bought her for Christmas. I knelt on the floor, held the hanger that used to hold her favorite sweater, and felt something collapse inside me. No goodbye note, no explanation, just a woman who once said, "Forever," now saying, "I'm done." I thought I was going to be sick. The next day, I woke up to a notification from our joint bank app. She had transferred out every last dollar, left me with $1. 32. $1.32. Felt intentional. It was intentional. She had planned it. I checked our shared calendar. I found a note from 3 weeks earlier labeled, "Plan be confirmed." It wasn't even hidden. She didn't care if I saw it. She just never expected me to look. I don't know how long I sat on the kitchen floor that day, but the tiles were cold and the clock hit 3:17 p.m. before I realized I hadn't moved. She left me like a ghost moving through drywall. No trace, no regret. But this isn't a story about a man who stayed broken. It's a story about what happened exactly 1 month later, when she walked into my new house, uninvited, and saw who was sitting at my dinner table. And in that moment, her jaw didn't just drop. It snapped. After she left, I started talking to myself more than I'd like to admit. I'd wander around the house saying things like, "She'll come back," or "This is just a phase," even though somewhere deep down, I knew. There was no coming back from the way she looked at me that night. Her eyes didn't even carry hate. They just looked through me, like I was a broken chair she'd finally decided to toss to the curb. I didn't eat for 3 days. Not properly, anyway. I just kept opening the fridge, closing it, forgetting why I walked into the kitchen in the first place. On day 4, I took a bite out of a slice of cold pizza and instantly cried. It was pepperoni, her favorite. I didn't even like it. I had ordered it out of habit. That's when I deleted her contact from my phone. Not because I didn't remember her number. Believe me, I still do. But because the act made me feel like I had some control, even if it was just over a few digits on a screen. The house got quieter. Even the floor stopped creaking like it used to when she walked through the hallway in those ridiculous fluffy socks she loved. I used to laugh at them. Now I'd kill to trip over them just once more. But everything changed the day I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "I thought you should know who she left you for." Attached was a blurry photo. At first, I couldn't even process what I was seeing. It was her, no surprise, but the man she was holding on to wasn't a stranger. He was my childhood best friend. We'd lost touch a few years ago after he moved to another city. He had stood next to me at our wedding. He gave a speech about how love was sacred and loyalty was everything. I stared at that photo for at least an hour. I zoomed in, zoomed out, closed it, reopened it. My hands were shaking the whole time, but I couldn't stop. Suddenly, everything clicked. Her long work dinners, the new perfume, her sudden obsession with privacy, the way she stopped touching me like she used to. It was never random. It was never about her needing space. She already had someone else. Someone she trusted enough to plan a future with while still lying next to me every night. It wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestration. The worst part? I didn't even have the strength to call her out. I just sat there, looking at a woman I no longer recognized and a friend I would never speak to again. My chest felt like it was caving in, and I let out this pathetic, whimpering sound I didn't even know I was capable of making. I didn't feel like a man. I felt like an afterthought. But something in me changed that day. I don't know if it was anger, shame, or just pure exhaustion from being humiliated so many times in silence. But I stood up, grabbed a garbage bag, and started packing. Not my clothes, hers. The few things she hadn't bothered to take. I didn't know where I was going to go yet, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house. It smelled like her shampoo and broken promises. That night, I slept on a deflated air mattress at my cousin's hunting cabin outside of town. No Wi-Fi, no heating, just me, a space heater that worked half the time, and a rusty coffee pot that made every brew taste like pennies. But you know what? It was the first night I slept more than 2 hours in weeks. And while I was sipping metallic coffee the next morning, I opened my inbox to find an invitation I never expected. It was from her. Not Darlene. The woman sitting at my dinner table that day, the one who made my ex-wife's face crumble like wet paper when she saw her. Her name was written plainly in the subject line. Coffee? It said. And I knew then, Darlene's plan B was about to turn into my plan A. I stared at the email for at least 15 minutes. I kept blinking like it might change, like maybe I had misread it. But there it was, her name in bold letters I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Renee Hallberg. We hadn't spoken since my wedding. Not out of conflict, just life pulling people apart. She had been Darlene's college roommate, and once upon a time she and I were close. Too close if you'd asked Darlene. There had always been this quiet energy between us, something we never talked about but both felt. I buried it the moment Darlene and I got serious. I thought Renee did too. And yet, 10 years later, she had found me again. Through an email that simply said, "Coffee." I didn't respond right away. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my own reflection for a long time. My eyes looked hollow, my beard patchy and uneven. I looked like the before photo of a man who had lost everything, and was still losing. So I typed back, "When and where?" Her reply came within minutes. The cafe she suggested was halfway between the city and the edge of nowhere. A quiet place that served tea in ceramic mugs and didn't allow laptops. I showed up early, half expecting her not to come. But 5 minutes before noon, she walked in. Exactly the same and completely different. Her hair was longer now, darker. She wore no makeup, no jewelry. Just jeans, boots, and that gray scarf she used to wear when she crammed for finals. She spotted me right away, and I stood up too fast, knocking my knee into the table like a complete idiot. She smiled soft, patient, like she had already forgiven me for still being a wreck. We sat. We didn't speak at first. The waiter came and she ordered black tea. I asked for a glass of water because my throat was closing. Then she leaned in and said it. No hesitation. No build-up. I warned her not to do this to you. My spine went cold. I hadn't even said hello, and she was already plunging the knife into the silence I'd built around me. What are you talking about? I stuttered. She told me she was seeing someone months ago, Renee continued, staring at her tea. She laughed like it was a game, said you'd be fine eventually, and that she deserved someone who made her feel dangerous again. My stomach turned. Why are you telling me this? She finally looked me in the eye. Because she didn't just cheat on you, Marshall. She used you, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore. That's when she pulled out her phone, tapped it, slid it across the table. Photos, screenshots, messages. And suddenly I saw everything. The trips I never knew she took. The second phone she used. The night she told me she was at her mom's, but was really in Vegas with him. My former best friend. Smiling, holding a champagne glass, and wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. I didn't want to see more, but I couldn't stop scrolling. And then I saw something that made me stop breathing altogether. She wasn't planning to leave me. Not until I said, "Good, I'm free." That moment, the one I thought was me taking back control, was actually the thing that ruined her plan. According to her messages, she was hoping to keep me around until the paperwork for the lake house cleared, and the timing looked better for her image. I had been a placeholder, a prop in her life's Instagram story. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there, holding my head, trying to piece myself back together. Renee reached out and touched my wrist. Just lightly, just enough. "You don't have to forgive her," she whispered. "But you do need to start over. That's why I reached out." I looked up, unsure of what she meant. That's when she pulled out a second envelope and slid it across the table. "What is this?" "It's a rental agreement," she said calmly, "for a place I'm fixing up. It's quiet, cheap, fresh start kind of place. You could use one of those." I opened it. It wasn't fancy, but it was far away from Darlene, and far away from who I used to be. I didn't say yes, not then, but I didn't say no either, because for the first time in weeks, I saw something in someone's eyes that wasn't pity or disappointment. I saw possibility. I moved in 2 days later, not because I was suddenly brave or ready to move on, but because the walls in my old house had started whispering back. Every sound reminded me of her, of Darlene. The click of a cabinet door echoed her slammed exits. The smell of cheap lavender still lingered in the hallway, no matter how many windows I opened. I had to get out before I convinced myself to beg her back. The house Renee offered me was small, tucked behind a weathered wooden gate at the end of a gravel road. The kind of place that had no neighbors, no noise, and no cell service unless you stood on the back porch with your phone angled just right. It was perfect, broken, quiet, isolated. Like me. The first night, I brought only a mattress, a folding chair, and a blanket that still smelled faintly of lemon detergent. I slept like the dead. No dreams, no memories, just silence. When I woke up, I didn't cry. That was new. Renee stopped by later that day with tools and 2 mugs of black coffee. She handed me one like we had done it 1,000 times before. There was no awkwardness between us. She didn't try to fix me. She just existed near me, and somehow that was enough. We started talking more over the next week. Nothing deep, just stories, updates, little memories. She told me she hated the city and always planned to end up back here. I told her I hated pepperoni pizza and had pretended to like it for almost a decade. We both laughed harder than we should have. And somewhere in between those conversations, the weight in my chest started to loosen. But Darlene wasn't gone. Not really. It happened on a Thursday. I had just come back from a run, my first in months. The sky was gray, my breath was ragged, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally sweating something out of me. That's when I saw it, her car. Parked crooked in the gravel driveway, engine still running, trunk wide open like she had left it in a hurry. I froze. She was standing on my porch, one hand raised like she was about to knock, the other clutching something I couldn't see. When she turned and saw me, her face twisted. Not with sadness, not with longing, with rage. "You moved on?" she shouted, stepping down onto the gravel. "You actually moved on?" I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because I couldn't find safe ones. "I gave you everything," she snapped, voice cracking. "And you just walk away like I meant nothing?" I stood there, sweaty and breathless, heart thumping not from the run, but from the realization that I was no longer scared of her. I was scared for her. She walked up to me, shoved a manila envelope into my chest. "I saw the pictures," she hissed. "You and Renee, in town, laughing like you never laughed with me." "I never laughed with you, Darlene," I said softly. "You were always somewhere else." She stepped back like I'd hit her, but her eyes weren't softening. They were hardening. She looked like a stranger again. Worse than a stranger. A stranger who believed she still had ownership over me. "You think she's better than me?" she said, her voice dropping. "You think she's going to save you?" I opened the envelope. Inside were my emails. Private ones. Ones I had written to Renee when we reconnected. Drafts I never even sent. "She hacked my email," I muttered, mostly to myself. "I read everything," she said. And if you think I'm going to let you rewrite the story to make me the villain, you are the villain, I said, louder this time. You planned your exit. You drained our accounts. You left with no explanation and laughed about it to your friends. That stunned her, for a second. But then she smiled. A slow, eerie smile that chilled me. You'll regret this, Marshall. Not today. Not tomorrow. But when she walks away too, just like I did, you'll remember I warned you. And then she got in her car, slammed the door, and peeled away down the gravel road, leaving a storm of dust and fury behind her. I stood in the silence, envelope still in hand, wondering what kind of woman smiles like that after wrecking a man's life. I didn't have an answer, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't the last time I'd see her. I didn't sleep that night. Even with the windows shut and every light turned off, I kept seeing her smile. That crooked, quiet smile she gave me before speeding off. Like she knew something I didn't. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about jealousy. It was control. Darlene had always needed to be the one writing the story. Even if she wasn't in the scene anymore, she still wanted to direct the ending. I kept glancing at the envelope she left behind. It sat on the counter like a cursed object. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part wanted to dig through every stolen message and find out just how far she'd gone. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I called Renee the next morning. She answered on the first ring. Did she show up? She asked without even saying hello. Yeah, I muttered. And she didn't come empty-handed. Renee sighed, and I could hear the rustle of fabric on her end. Like she was pacing. She texted me last night, she said. Blocked number. Just a photo of you standing in front of my place. I guess she was following us. Jesus. It's okay, Renee said quickly. She's bluffing. It's a scare tactic. I know her better than she thinks I do. I believed Renee. I wanted to, but something about Darlene's eyes yesterday had felt off. Like she wasn't just acting out of anger, but calculation. Later that day, I drove into town to clear my head. I stopped at a bookstore and wandered around without picking anything up. At one point, I caught myself staring at a copy of The Art of Manipulation, and I laughed bitterly under my breath. When I got back to the cabin, my front door was ajar. My stomach dropped. I stood there for a full minute, heart pounding, hands trembling, before I stepped inside. Everything looked normal at first glance. Couch cushions in place, my shoes still by the door, dishes untouched. But when I walked into the bedroom, I froze. The envelope, the one Darlene had given me, it was on my pillow. I hadn't left it there. I scanned the room. No signs of forced entry. No broken locks. Nothing missing. But the message was clear. She had been inside, and she wanted me to know it. I called the sheriff. He sent out a deputy who looked more tired than concerned. He filed a report, asked if I wanted a restraining order, and then added, just so you know, those take weeks to process. And if she's your legal wife, the cabin being in your name might not be enough to keep her out, depending on how the divorce is filed. I thanked him, though I didn't know what for. I was left standing in a home that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. Renee came over that night. She didn't say much, just held my hand and sat next to me while I stared at the door, expecting Darlene to appear again. But she didn't. Not that night. Instead, she went online. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. My old coworker had tried to reach me, so had my aunt, my former boss, my gym, even my bank. They had all received messages, anonymous emails, from a burner address, with screenshots, accusations, warnings. Marshall is unstable. He's stalking a woman named Renee. He might be dangerous. Please be careful. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, as my entire sense of self unraveled. Darlene wasn't just lashing out. She was building a narrative, destroying my name before I even knew I had something left to lose. And the worst part? She was good at it. I could see it happening in real time. Friends pulling away. My inbox flooded with confused apologies. People too polite to say what they were really thinking. I wasn't just losing my reputation. I was becoming the villain in someone else's story, just like she warned. By the end of the week, I was radioactive. I could feel it in the way people avoided eye contact at the gas station. I heard it in the sudden, awkward pauses when old friends answered my calls. One even said it outright, "Marshall, look man, I don't want to get caught in the middle of this. Whatever's going on between you and your wife, I just can't be involved." She was still calling herself my wife. That's the part that made my stomach turn. She'd abandoned me. She'd moved on. But she refused to let go of the title, as if she could keep reaping the benefits of being the victim while pulling strings from behind the curtain. I tried to stay calm, tried to remind myself that if I reacted, if I lashed out, it would only feed the version of me she was selling to the world. But inside, I was unraveling. Slowly, quietly, like a rope being sawed from the inside strand by strand. And then Renee lost her job. It was a Tuesday. I was halfway through building a bookshelf she had asked me to help with when she got the call. I could hear her voice in the other room, firm at first, then brittle, then silence. She walked back in with her phone still in hand, face pale. "They said they're reevaluating my contract," she whispered, "because of personal conduct concerns." I didn't have to ask. I already knew. It was her. Darlene hadn't just come after me. She'd come after anyone close to me. And she was doing it the same way she always did, quietly, strategically, under the illusion of innocence. We sat in silence for a long time. Renee looked angry, but more than that, she looked tired, like she'd seen this pattern before, like she had tried to warn me a long time ago, and now we were both caught in the consequences of my denial. "I'm sorry," I said. Came out so broken, so small. She looked at me, eyes soft. "This isn't your fault, Marshall. It's hers. And we need to stop letting her decide how this ends." That was the moment something shifted. I wasn't a fighter. I never had been. I was the kind of man who avoided conflict at all costs, who apologized just to keep the peace, who stayed in a broken marriage because I was terrified of making things worse. But that version of me had been burned down. What was left standing now was something else, something quieter, sharper. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth to cut through the noise. So I started documenting everything. Every email, every message, every incident. I filed for a restraining order, even though the deputy warned me it might not stick. I consulted a lawyer using the last few $100s I had in savings. And I reached out to a friend who worked in cybersecurity. "I need to trace an IP, I told him. "She's using burner accounts, but I think she's slipping." He agreed to help. Meanwhile, I found a notebook, just a plain spiral one from the grocery store. I started writing down every memory I could think of, good and bad. I needed to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that it hadn't always been this way, that there had been love once, even if it died a long time ago. But the biggest surprise came 3 days later. I was sitting on the porch when a car pulled up slowly, like it wasn't sure if it belonged there. A man stepped out, middle-aged, overdressed for the weather, nervous. "You Marshall?" he asked. I nodded cautiously. "I'm her brother," he said. "Darlene's." My mouth went dry. He looked down, rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't come here to defend her. I came to apologize and warn you." He told me things I wasn't ready to hear, about their childhood, about how this wasn't the first time she'd destroyed someone, about the last man she was with, how she accused him of stalking after she emptied his accounts and disappeared with his car, how he spent 2 years trying to clear his name. "She's not sick," he said. "She knows exactly what she's doing, and she's been doing it her whole life. But no one ever calls her out because she's charming, beautiful, convincing." "Why now?" I asked him. "Why come to me?" "Because you're not the first," he said. "But I'd like you to be the last." He handed me a flash drive. "Everything I have," he said. "Photos, messages, even recordings. She doesn't know I kept them. I'm not proud of staying quiet, but maybe now's the time to stop." And then he got back in his car and drove away. I sat there holding that tiny drive like it weighed 50 pounds, because I knew what was on it could change everything. But I also knew Darlene wouldn't go down quietly. Took me a full day to open the flash drive. Not because I didn't want to know what was on it, but because I was afraid of what it would confirm. I already knew Darlene had hollowed me out, piece by piece, like rust eating through metal. I didn't know if I could handle seeing how methodically she'd done it to others. But that night, after Renee had fallen asleep on the couch beside me, her head on a pillow and her laptop softly humming from the floor, I sat down at the kitchen table with an old secondhand Chromebook and plugged it in. There were 3 folders. One was labeled David. The second, Marcus. The third, Marshall. I froze. She had a folder for me, as if I were another project. Another calculated arc in the twisted narrative she'd been scripting for years. I opened David's first. He looked nothing like me. Bald. Glasses. Lived in Austin, apparently. There were screenshots of their texts. Sweet at first, intimate, playful. Then came the shift. Her tone turned cold. The dates stopped being reciprocal. And then the receipts. Airline bookings in her name, all charged to his card. A private message from a woman named Carol claiming to be David's sister, saying she destroyed him, took everything. And when he reported the fraud, she told police he'd been stalking her for months. I didn't need to see more. I moved on to Marcus. This one was worse. Photos of bruises. Voice recordings of her whispering things like, "Don't test me." He had tried to fight back. Legally, emotionally. But the more he did, the deeper she buried him in accusations. One file had his restraining order. Against her, she had twisted the story so well that he looked like the abuser. By the time I opened my own folder, my hands were trembling. The files were new, active. There were recordings, some I didn't even know existed, of our arguments, taken completely out of context. There was a screenshot of an unsent email draft I had written in frustration weeks ago titled, "I can't take this anymore." She had annotated it, circled lines, added notes, like a lawyer prepping a case. And there was something else. A message, a voice memo, from her to someone named Howard. "She's getting close to him," Darlene's voice said, smooth and casual. "And once he's isolated enough, I'll come in. I'll make it look like he lost his mind. Renee will walk. The sheriff already thinks he's fragile. I just have to time it right." I had to pause the file. My vision was blurring. She wasn't just vindictive. She wasn't just cruel. She was orchestrating my collapse, carefully, efficiently, and with complete confidence that no one would believe me once she pulled the final string. Renee stirred in the living room. I closed the laptop quickly, too quickly, the sound jolting her awake. She sat up, blinking, rubbing her eyes. "You okay?" she asked. I tried to answer, but my voice cracked. I just shook my head. She got up, walked over, sat beside me. I handed her the flash drive, let her hear it all. Her expression didn't change much, just grew tighter, more still. When it ended, she closed the laptop, exhaled slowly, and said, "We need to go to the police. Again. With this." So we did. We showed everything to the local authorities. The flash drive, the recordings, the pattern. This time they listened. This time the officer didn't just nod blankly. He asked questions, took notes, promised to escalate it. But just as we were leaving, he glanced at us and said something I'll never forget. "Be careful. When someone this smart starts losing control of their plan, that's when they get dangerous." I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Renee. The next morning, her car was missing. Keys still on the counter. No note. Her phone on the porch. The front gate wide open. She was gone. Just gone. She wasn't in the cabin. Not in the yard. Not in town. I called everyone. No answer. Her friends hadn't heard from her. She wasn't at the hospital. She wasn't at her sister's. Felt like my soul had been ripped out all over again. I sat in the dirt by the porch with her phone in my hands, staring at the last photo she'd taken. It was of us, me and Renee, sitting at the lake behind the cabin. My arm awkwardly draped over her shoulder, her head tilted into mine, laughing about something I can't even remember. It was blurry, imperfect, real. For 3 days I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I filed a missing person report. I printed flyers. I drove aimlessly through back roads with her scarf on the passenger seat, just hoping for something. Anything. And then she came back. Just like that. At sunrise on the fourth day, I heard footsteps outside. I opened the door, and there she was. Mud on her boots, leaves in her hair, tired but very much alive. I was too stunned to speak. She looked at me, and her voice cracked. She tried to corner me, she whispered. But I saw her coming. I left. I hid. She explained everything. Darlene had called her the night before she vanished. Calm, sweet, like a friend. Told her she wanted to make peace and say goodbye. Invited her to meet in the woods outside town, where they used to hike in college. Renee didn't tell me because she didn't want me to worry. But the second she got there, she knew it was a setup. She had a story planned, Renee said. She was going to make it look like I snapped, like you were the common thread in all the drama. But Renee ran, through the woods, lost her car, ditched her phone on purpose. She stayed with a family she found near the river who didn't ask questions. People who lived so far off-grid they didn't even know what Facebook was. She waited until she was sure Darlene wasn't following. Then she came home. We both broke down. On the porch. In the dirt. Like children. That week, with the help of the flash drive and Renee's recorded call, Darlene was issued a temporary restraining order and placed under formal investigation. She hasn't contacted either of us since. And for the first time in years, I've stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's been 6 months. The cabin's no longer temporary. Renee and I painted the kitchen. We built a garden. I finally bought a new coffee maker, the kind with a timer, so I wake up to something warm and steady. Some mornings, I catch myself smiling for no reason at all. And I don't feel guilty anymore. Not for letting go of Darlene. Not for surviving her. Not for starting over. She tried to write my ending. But I picked up the pen. Now, I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm free. Thank you for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Which moment from the story hit you the hardest? Was it Darlene's manipulation? Renee's disappearance? Or the moment Marshall finally took back control? Share your thoughts below. Your insights might just help someone else going through the same storm. And remember, the truth always finds a way to surface. Even after the darkest night, the daylight breaks. Until next time.